Welcome to this overview of estimating from scratch tutorial. In this video, we'll help you get to grips with estimating from scratch using the Estimate module. We'll also introduce you to the build program, reports, bills of quantities and quotes. Double-click the BuildingWorks icon on your desktop to launch the software. From the BuildingWorks home screen, you can create new projects and open existing ones. There are also links to help topics which you might find useful. To get started, you'll need to create a project. A project encompasses all of the work you're undertaking for a client on a specific site. So a project may consist of just one job, for example an extension, or multiple jobs, as in the case of a refurbishment of a property with an extension. Click New on the left-hand menu. The project option will already be selected. Tick the checkboxes next to the items you want to include in your project. I'm going to show you how to do a standalone estimate. Once you've selected the estimate option, you'll need to select a labour productivity profile. The labour productivity profile you select will set the labour allowances for each of the tasks within your estimate. The extension and renovation labour productivity profiles generally allow more time for each task to be completed. You can customise the labour allowance for each type of labour from within your estimate. For now, I'm going to select the New Build Labour Productivity Profile and click Create Project. After a moment, you'll find yourself looking at the Project Details screen. From the Project Details screen, you can add the client and site address details, and you can also add extra jobs to your project if you need to. Take a few moments to familiarise yourself with the screen. Depending on the version of BuildingWorks you're running, the Project Details screen may appear slightly differently. From the main window, you can open your estimate and the drawing if you've added one to your project. At the top of the screen is the ribbon. You'll see different tabs on the ribbon with different buttons depending on which screen you're looking at. The Project Explorer sits on the left-hand side of the screen. Use the Project Explorer to navigate your way around BuildingWorks, for example moving between the estimate, build program and quotes. Let's enter the client details for the project. Click the Add button. The Add Contact dialog box pops up. Click on the dots at the end of the full name input box. The Edit Name dialog box pops up. Enter the client's name into the various fields. And then click OK. Complete any other fields as appropriate by clicking into each input box and typing in the relevant details. Once you're happy with the details you've entered, click OK. If the client address and the site address are the same, as is often the case for an extension or renovation, ensure the Use Client Address for Site Address tick box is ticked to save yourself the effort of entering the details twice. Now let's save the project. It's a good idea to save your project at regular intervals. If you press the Save As Project button, you can number your project each time. Then if you make a mistake or need to make a change, it'll be much easier to retrace your steps. Click the Save As Project button, find or create a suitable location to save your project, and then enter a project name. Once you're done, click Save. Now you've saved the project and given it a name. The project name is displayed at the top of the Project Explorer. Whenever you create a new project, BuildingWorks will automatically add one job to the project. You can see it here on the Project Explorer. To start with, it's called Job 1. Each job contains its own estimate and drawing if applicable. To rename the job, right-click on the job name on the Project Explorer and click Rename. Type in a new name for the job. Then click OK. Of course, you can have multiple jobs within a project. For example, you might have two houses on one development. Each house would need its own job. To add an extra job to the project, simply click the Add Job button on the Home tab. A dialog box pops up. Enter a name for the job. Tick the boxes next to the items you want to include in your job, as you did when you first created your project. I'm happy to stick with Estimate and the New Build Labour Productivity Profile. Once you're happy with your choices, click OK. The new job appears on the Project Explorer below the first job. Let's start on our estimate for Plot 1. Click on the estimate under Plot 1. you'll find yourself looking at the estimate dashboard. From here, you can open all of the estimating calculators within your estimate. There aren't any estimating calculators in the estimate yet, so we'll need to add some using the Estimating tab. Let's estimate some brick and block cavity walls. Click on the External Walls button. Select a wall type from the drop-down menu. I'm going to select the brick and block cavity type. The Wall Component Builder pops up. From here you can choose the specification and configuration of your external wall and enter its dimensions. You can resize the window by holding your cursor over the edge of the window until a double-headed arrow appears. Then press and hold down the left mouse button to drag the edge of the window. It's a good idea to make the window larger, as you'll then avoid having to scroll down the window to check and enter dimensions later on. The first screen prompts you to select a specification for the wall. A choice of specifications with different thermal ratings, thicknesses and rates are available out of the box. Each specification includes real materials and manufacturer product data. By clicking on the column headers, you can order the list by U-value, structural thickness or rate to help you select the most appropriate specification. If you want to review and edit any of the specifications, you can do so by selecting the specification and clicking the Review Specification button. You can swap or edit a rate or resource within the specification, or delete any rates or resources you don't need. You can also add items to the specification. Once you've chosen your wall specification, click Next. The next screen asks you to select a configuration. Note that the upper floor configuration doesn't include foundations and footings. To estimate your ground floor walls and first floor walls in one go, including foundations and footings, select the multi-story with foundations option. Then click Next. The next screen prompts you to select a specification for the foundations. Review and edit any of the specifications by clicking on the specification and then clicking the Review Specification button. If you're happy with the specification out of the box, click Next. Now we can check and edit the foundation dimensions. If you want to change the dimension, simply overtype the dimension in the box. I'm going to leave it at 900mm for now though. All dimensions are entered into the component builder in millimetres by default. Take a look at the video on how to change the units if you'd rather work in metres. To move to the next input box, press the Tab key on your keyboard. The cursor jumps to the next input box where you can edit the dimension as before. Press the Tab key again. The cursor jumps to the next input box, and so on. Using the Tab key is the quickest way of moving between the input boxes. You'll notice that as you click into each input box, a corresponding dimension arrow appears on the diagram. If at any time you need to go back and change anything, you can click back through the screens using the Back button. Assuming you're happy with the foundation dimensions, click Next. This next screen prompts you to select a specification for the footings. Select a specification and review it if you need to using the Review Specification button, otherwise click Next. This next screen prompts you to select a footing configuration. Of course, it's crucial that you ensure your selected foundation and footing are compatible in terms of construction and dimensions. Select shallow strip or trench fill as required, and then click Next. Now we can review the footing dimensions. Using the Tab key, work your way around the dimension input boxes, making any changes as needed. If the overall height of the inner and outer leaves is not equal, a red warning message will appear telling you, so that you can quickly correct any mistakes. This message helps you ensure that the DPC height is correct. Once you're confident that the footing dimensions are correct, click Next. The next screen is all about the wall dimensions. Click into the Height of Unfinished Wall input box. The tech tip at the top of the window explains what dimension you need to enter. Each input box has its own tech tip, and they're a helpful point of reference if you come across any dimensions you're unsure of. In this example, the tech tip explains that we need to enter the height of floor zone, which doesn't require plastering and decoration. Tab along to the length of wall input box. You can estimate each wall individually, or you can enter the total perimeter of your building in one go. For speed, I'm going to enter the total perimeter, which is 30 metres or 30,000 millimetres. Press the Tab key to move to the total height of wall input box. I'm happy with a total wall height of 5,025 millimetres. Behind the scenes, BuildingWorks is calculating the total area of wall. BuildingWorks will automatically deduct the area of any openings when you later add doors and windows to the wall. Press the Tab key and enter the number of floors. Again, 2 is correct. Once the wall dimensions are complete, click Next. The final screen gives you the opportunity to add any sundry items for the length of wall you're estimating. You're more likely to need these items if the wall you're building is part of an extension or renovation project. To add sundry items to your wall estimating calculator, click on the rate quantity input boxes and type the number or length required. For now, click Finish to review the estimate. BuildingWorks now opens the brick and block cavity wall component. You'll find yourself looking at a screen showing the dimensions of the wall. Towards the bottom of the screen, you'll find the building components which are linked to this wall, namely the foundations and footings. Here at the top of the screen, you can see the total cost of the wall component. You've just estimated this in a matter of minutes. You'll notice 3 tabs at the top of this main window. Click on the Dimension Linked Specified Items tab. This tab shows a breakdown of all the items estimated based on the dimensions you've entered. As you look down the screen, you'll find a detailed breakdown of all the specified rates and assemblies. If we look at the description of the brick and block partial fill cavity wall assembly, you'll see that it includes brickwork, blockwork, insulation, cavity ties, plastering and decoration. All of these items are linked to the wall area dimension. BuildingWorks gives you a rate per square metre, alongside the total cost of the assembly. With software as intelligent as this, missing things off your estimate will be a thing of the past. Click on the arrow next to the brick and block partial fill cavity wall assembly to have a look at it in more detail. Now you can see each of the rates which make up this assembly. There's a rate, or in other words, a cost per square metre, for each complete distinct task, such as laying the brickwork or fixing the insulation. Each rate includes the cost of labour, plant and materials. From here you can see the rate quantity and also the cost per unit for each rate. Clicking on any of the plus buttons next to the rates, you can look at each rate in more detail. For example, the brickwork rate comprises bricks, mortar and labour to lay the bricks. You can quickly add extra walls with the same specification to the estimating calculator, such as gables, using the Add Wall button on the Component tab. Now, if you want to, you can swap the resources being used to see how it impacts on your budget. Let's have a go at swapping the brick type. At the moment I'm looking at the estimate for the individual wall or section of wall I've just estimated. It's called Wall 1. You can see it here on the Project Explorer. To swap a resource, or in other words to make changes to a specification, you need to be in the top level of the estimating calculator, not within an individual wall. In the Project Explorer, you can see that the estimating calculator is called Brick and Block Partial Fill Cavity Wall. Estimating calculators are highlighted in bold font and have a border around the icon. If you change the brick type in the Brick and Block Partial Fill Cavity Wall estimating calculator, the brick type will change in every wall within this estimating calculator. So if I had another wall called Wall 2, the brick type would change there as well. So let's open the estimating calculator. Click on the arrow next to the assembly containing the resource you want to swap, and then click on the plus button next to the rate. Now we've drilled down to the individual resources. So because I want to change the brick type, I'm going to locate the brick and then click the adjacent swap button. Once you've clicked the swap resource button, a dialog box pops up explaining that changing a resource within the specification will change it across the entire estimating calculator. So as I mentioned before, if you've got multiple walls within this estimating calculator, the brick type will change in all of them. In addition, if you estimate any walls in the future using this estimating calculator, the new brick type will be used. Click OK. The swap resource window pops up. Scroll down the window to find the brick type that you want to use. Click on the resource you want to swap into your estimate, and it'll appear highlighted in blue. Then click OK to select the resource. Here you can see that the new resource has appeared in place of the old one, and the estimate cost has been updated to reflect the change. Remember, this change will also have occurred everywhere throughout the estimating calculator where the old brick was specified. You can also swap rates in a similar way, if for example you want to change a system being used. When you swap a rate, you're swapping a collection of material, labour and plant resources. For example, you could swap the plastering rate, switching a square edge plasterboard for a cheaper taper edge plasterboard rate. Now let's add some doors and windows to the estimate. The easiest way to do it is to add them from within a wall component, and the software will then net off the door and window area from the brickwork. Let's go back to the wall component, Wall 1. You might need to click on the arrow next to the estimating calculator. We need to be within the individual wall component so that BuildingWorks knows which wall the door or window is going into. To add a door or window, click the corresponding button on the Component tab. I'm going to add a door to this estimate. Once the drop-down menu appears, you can select the type of door you want to estimate. I'm going to select a front door, so I'm going to select the External Door Sets option. The Add External Door Sets window pops up. The first screen prompts you to select a door. You can use the filters to home in on the door that you want. Select the manufacturer, width, U-value, or perhaps the colour you're looking for. I'm going to select 988mm wide doors, and I'm going to select Duck Egg Blue. You can also search for a specific item by typing a search term into the Find box. Once you've located the door you want, click on the door to select it, and then click the Next button. The next screen prompts you to select a lintel. Once again, you can filter the selection by lintel type, manufacturer, and so on. Click on the lintel to select it if it's not already selected. For cavity walls, you can select either cavity lintels or separate lintels for each leaf of the wall. If you choose a lintel for one leaf, you'll be prompted to select a second lintel. Click the Next button. The next screen prompts you to select a specification. In the case of external door sets, select a specification based on whether you require a cavity tray. You can take a look at any of the specifications by clicking on them and clicking the Review Specification button. If you're happy with the specification, click Next. The next screen prompts you for the door dimensions. Most of the dimensions are greyed out, as the dimensions are linked to the door you selected on the first screen. You can, however, amend the external reveal depth. The tech tip tells us that this is the dimension from the outer facing of the wall to the door, and it's used to calculate the reveal areas for rendering and decoration. Once you've checked this dimension, click the Next button. The final screen prompts you to add sundry items for the door you're estimating. I'm going to add 3 cavity weep vents. Click into the rate quantity input box and enter the number or length of the sundry item as required. If at any point you decide you need to go back and change something you've selected or entered, you can go back to the previous screens by clicking the Back button. Once you're happy with all of your choices, click Finish. A dialog box pops up asking how many identical doors you want to estimate. It's important to note that if you've quantified any sundry items, they will be duplicated for every door. So if I entered 2 identical doors here, BuildingWorks would estimate double the quantity of cavity weep vents, so I'd end up with 6. I'm just estimating 1 door here, so I'm going to click OK. You'll return to the wall you started in the Dimensions Linked Specified Items tab, where the door opening has been added to the estimate. Click on the Dimensions and Linked Components tab, and you'll see that the door has been added as a linked component. Click the Open button on the linked door to view the door. You can see from the Project Explorer that you've jumped to the door component, as the door is now highlighted in blue. Here we can review the door dimensions, and from the Dimension Linked Specified Items tab, you can check all of the estimated items which are linked to the door's dimensions. If we click back to the estimate dashboard, we can see that the estimate is quickly coming together. Take a look at the total cost of the job as it stands. Once you've estimated your doors and windows, you might want to turn your attention to the roof. Click the Roofs button on the Estimating tab. Then select a roof type from the drop-down menu. I'm going to select the Cold Truss Roofs. The Roof Component Builder pops up. From here you can choose the specification and configuration of your roof and enter its dimensions. Start by choosing a specification which suits your job. I'm going to select the specification with timbers at 400mm and a high thermal performance. Once you've clicked on a specification, click Next. The next screen prompts you to select a roof configuration. I'm going to select Apex Roof for this example. You would usually start with an Apex roof, then add half hips and valleys as required. You can also use the Any Shape configuration for roof shapes not covered by the other options. Once you've selected a configuration, click Next. The next screen prompts you to enter the dimensions of the roof. I'm happy with a pitch of 45 degrees, but you can of course overtype the default pitch. Press the Tab key to move to the next input box. Enter the length of any abutment to a wall which you're constructing, or enter the length of any abutment to an existing wall, as in the case of an extension. Of course, if you're estimating a standalone Apex roof, leave these input boxes set to 0. Enter the ceiling width, the gable width to soffits, the tile overhang, enter the ceiling length and the eaves length, and again the tile overhang to the eaves. Once you're happy with the dimensions, click Next. The next screen invites you to add any sundry items, including rainwater accessories, loft hatches and bracing. Type in the length of downpipe you need. You can extend the rate quantity column to make it easier to see what you've entered. To estimate the other downpipe and gutter fittings, simply type in the number of each fitting you need. Scroll further down the window to see the other sundry options. I'm going to add one loft hatch. Now I'm going to look at the additional timbers. To add purlins, binders, diagonal bracing and laces, enter the length required into the rate quantity input boxes. I'm going to add 16.8 metres of laces to roof rafters. Once you're happy you've quantified all the sundry items you need, click the Next button. In the case of a truss roof, the final screen prompts you to check the price allowance for the trusses. If you're estimating a cut roof, you'll skip this step. If you have multiple instances of roof trusses of the same specification within the estimate, changing the price here will update the price allowance for every instance of the roof trusses. Scroll across the screen and you'll see that you can set the cost up to be a PC sum or known price using the allowance type drop-down box. Enter the price per square metre into the price input box. You can later view and change the allowance of the trusses, along with other material allowances, on the Resource Price Allowances tab of the Estimate dashboard. Once you're done, click Finish. The roof component of the estimate opens up. Remember, this is the Dimension Linked Specified Items tab. It lists all of the items which have been specified for the roof based on the dimensions you've entered. As you look down the screen, you'll find a detailed breakdown of all the assemblies and rates in the roof specification, which are linked to the dimensions of the roof. Notice how quickly you've priced up the entire roof, including trusses, tiles, insulated ceiling, fascias and soffits, down to the last bracket and screw. Click on the Dimensions and Linked Components tab. Here you can see the cost of the roof and also check and edit its dimensions. Click on the Sundry Specified Items tab. Here you can review and edit the sundry items that you've added to the estimate. Now let's take a look at the Gantt chart, or build program as it's called in BuildingWorks. What's really clever about the build program is that although you can use it standalone to manage the job, the chart is actually linked to all the materials and labour specified, so BuildingWorks can produce time-based reports such as cash flow or profit forecasts, or just-in-time material and labour schedules. Click on the build program for this job on the Project Explorer. The first time you navigate to the build program, you'll need to build or create the build program by entering a few details. A dialog box pops up prompting you to enter some key information. Select a start date by clicking on the drop-down box. On the calendar tool which pops up, click through the months using the arrows and click on the desired start date. Then select a build program template from the drop-down box. The template determines the order of the build phases in the Gantt chart and their dependencies. For example, our typical build program assumes that the masonry shell and roof need to be completed before windows and doors are installed. However, if you are building a masonry skinned timber frame building, you might want to make the building weathertight and begin the internal works before starting on the masonry skin. You could set up a new build program in your library to reflect this. Click Next. The next dialog box asks you to enter the number of labourers who will be working on site. Click into the quantity column adjacent to the labourers type and use the arrows to increase or decrease the number as required to reflect the gang sizes you'll be using. These gang sizes are used to calculate the length of each build phase bar in the chart based on the information contained in the estimate. Once you're happy with the gang sizes, click Finish. After a few moments, the build program will appear on screen. On the left-hand side, you'll see the task list, and on the right-hand side, you'll see the Gantt chart. You can scroll across the task list and Gantt chart using the scroll bars at the bottom of the window. You can easily change the start or end date of tasks, or move tasks on the chart. Note that altering the task lengths does not change the labour calculations in the estimate. However, by altering the build program, it does immediately show the changes in your just-in-time schedules, cash flow and profit forecasts. When altering task lengths, it helps if the timescale is set to week/day and you're zoomed in so you can clearly see the days and weeks on the chart. Hover your cursor over a task to see the task name and labourers associated with the task. To increase the length of a task, hover your cursor over the end of the bar until a double-headed arrow appears. Then, holding down the left mouse button, stretch the task until it reaches the desired date. To move a whole task forwards or backwards, hold down the left mouse button on the bar and drag it into its new position. Any changes will cascade through the later tasks. Take a look at the video on setting up the build program for advice on how to get the most out of your build program. Let's spend a few moments looking at the array of reports produced by BuildingWorks. Note that to ensure the dates display correctly on your reports, you need to have first set up the build program, as we've just done. Click Reporting on the Project Explorer to navigate to the list of reports. The Estimate Completion Checker dialog box pops up, prompting you to check your estimate. The Estimate Completion Checker helps ensure that you haven't missed anything from your estimate or made any errors. The traffic lights on the left highlight any potential issues with the estimate. Take a look at the video on reports for more information on how to use the Estimate Completion Checker. Click Close for now. Here's the list of reports. Let's open the cost report. Double-click on a report on the main window to open it. At the top of the screen, you'll notice a brief description of the report. As you can see, the costs report gives a breakdown of costs by build phase. See how it's produced the report without any additional typing from you. If the data in any of the columns isn't displaying in full, you can auto-fit the data. Hover your cursor over the edge of a column until a double-headed arrow appears. Then double-click to auto-fit the text. You can remove any columns you don't want by dragging them off the report. Click on the data headers area of the report, then drag the fields you don't want to include off the report until a red cross appears. If you're happy with the report and are ready to print, click the Print Preview button. Edit the report using the Page Setup and Scale buttons if you need to, then click Print. Let's look at a more complex report. Another way of opening a report is to click on the report name on the Project Explorer. Let's take a look at the Material Order Schedule. The Material Order Schedule gives a breakdown of materials with order dates and quantity and cost information. The order dates are linked to the build program and each resource's lead time. You can export your report, for example to email to your merchant, by clicking the Export button. Take a look at the video on reviewing and printing reports for more help with the reporting tools. Let's minimise the reports for now and take a look at the bills of quantities. There are both elemental and work section bills of quantities, which have several options to tailor the way prices and products are displayed. Let's take a quick look at the work section bill of quantities. You can tailor the content of the bill of quantities using the parameters on the left-hand side, and once you're happy with it, you can print or export it as before with the reports. Finally, don't forget to check out the quotes.